Elon Musk sat quietly in the back seat of his black Tesla Model S as his driver pulled into the drive-thru of a McDonald's on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It was late, past midnight, and he was returning from a long day of meetings. He wasn't particularly hungry, but he wanted a coffee to keep himself awake. As the car rolled forward, the speaker crackled to life with a familiar monotone greeting, and Elon sighed. When the car reached the window, he turned to grab his drink, but something caught his attention. The young man at the register had an intense look in his eyes, something Elon had seen in the brightest minds he had ever worked with. A certain hunger, not for food, but for something bigger. The name tag read David. David handed Elon his coffee, and as their eyes met, something clicked in Musk's mind. "What's your story?" he asked, surprising both himself and David. The young man hesitated, clearly caught off guard, before forcing a polite smile. "Just working, try to make ends meet." Elon didn't believe it. There was something deeper behind that response. He glanced at the Tesla logo on his own coffee cup and then back at David. "Have you ever worked with Tesla technology?" The question seemed random, but David's reaction was instant. His eyes flickered with recognition, and for the first time, his smile was genuine. "Actually, yes," he admitted. "I studied electrical engineering and worked on Tesla battery efficiency projects in college." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "Then why are you here?" David hesitated. "Life happened. My mom got sick. Had to drop out. Bills piled up." This was the quickest way to survive. Something about his honesty struck Elon. He reached for the coffee, but instead of driving off, he did something uncharacteristic. "I want to talk. Step outside for a moment." David's manager shot him a warning glance, but Elon Musk wasn't an ordinary customer. After a moment's hesitation, David nodded, quickly letting his coworker know he'd be back. He stepped outside, the chilly air hitting his skin. Elon studied him, then asked, "What did you work on?" David's face lit up for the first time. He started explaining his unfinished research, how he was exploring a new way to optimize Tesla battery output, a concept that could extend battery life by 30%. Elon listened intently. The ideas were solid. The logic was sound. But more importantly, David spoke with passion. He wasn't just an employee punching a clock. He was an engineer trapped in the wrong world. "Did you ever finish the research?" Elon asked. David shook his head. "No funding. No degree. No chance." Elon pulled out his phone. "You do now. Come to my office tomorrow. You start at Tesla." David's breath caught in his throat. "You're serious?" "I don't waste time. You have talent. Talent should never rot behind a counter. Be there at 9 a.m. or this offer disappears." David was speechless, his mind spinning. The reality of it all hadn't even set in when Elon got back into his car and disappeared into the night. The next morning, David stood outside the Tesla headquarters, dressed in the only formal clothes he owned. He was nervous, but excitement overshadowed everything. The receptionist directed him to the main conference room, and as he walked inside, he saw Elon Musk waiting for him. Elon tossed a folder onto the table. "That's your project. Let's see what you can do." David opened it, his eyes widening. This was it, his old research, polished and improved. He looked up at Elon. "You actually read my notes?" "Every word." "Now prove to me you deserve this." David took a deep breath. This was his moment. He grabbed a pen and started sketching new equations. Hours passed, and Elon watched in silence. Finally, David put the pen down. "This will work. I can make it work." Elon smiled. "Good. Because if you do, you'll change the future of Tesla forever." But not everyone at Tesla was thrilled about the newcomer. Some executives murmured that Elon was taking a risk on someone with no degree, no experience, and no corporate background. One senior engineer, Richard, made it clear he didn't approve. "We don't hire people from fast food counters," he said under his breath. David heard it, but he ignored it. He had something to prove. Weeks turned into months. David worked tirelessly, refining the battery model late into the night, often sleeping in the Tesla lab. He didn't care. He was where he was meant to be. But just as he was on the verge of a breakthrough, a disaster struck. One evening, A major system failure occurred in a prototype car being tested. The battery overheated, nearly causing a fire. The blame fell on David's experimental modifications. The backlash was immediate. The executives wanted him gone. He's inexperienced. He's reckless. He's not one of us. David sat outside the Tesla building, staring at the ground, defeated. Just as he was about to walk away, a voice cut through the silence. "Are you giving up?" He turned to see Elon standing there, arms crossed. David exhaled. "I let you down." "No, you didn't. Failure isn't the end, it's a lesson. The question is, what did you learn?" David thought for a moment. "That I miscalculated heat distribution. If I adjust the module, the problem is fixable." Elon nodded. "Then go fix it." With renewed determination, David got back to work. This time, he didn't just improve the system. He revolutionized it. His modifications led to a breakthrough that not only fixed the overheating problem, but also made Tesla batteries more efficient than ever before. The day the final test succeeded, Elon called the entire Tesla team into a meeting. He pointed at David. "This man just changed the future of electric vehicles. He's not a college graduate. He's not a corporate executive. He's just brilliant. And brilliance doesn't need a degree." The room fell silent. Even Richard, the senior engineer who doubted David, couldn't argue. The results spoke for themselves. Elon turned to David. "Welcome to Tesla. For real this time." David couldn't believe it. A year ago, he was working the night shift at McDonald's. Now he was an engineer at Tesla, standing beside Elon Musk, proving to the world that talent can come from anywhere. And this was just the beginning. David stood on the rooftop of Tesla's headquarters at night, looking down at the glowing city below. The air was crisp, and the stars above felt closer than ever. A year ago, he had been flipping burgers, his dreams buried under bills and exhaustion. Now, he was part of something bigger. He had proven himself. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of his journey. It was only the beginning. As he gazed at the skyline, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A voice on the other end spoke. "David Reed." "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter. I work with a private aerospace research group, and we've been watching your work. I need to talk to you about something urgent." David frowned. "How did you get my number?" There was a brief pause. "Elon gave it to me." David's stomach tightened. Why would Elon give his number to a stranger? Before he could ask more questions, the voice continued. "I need you to come to an address. I'll text you. Midnight. Don't tell anyone." The line went dead. David stood there, heart pounding. His first instinct was to call Elon, but something told him this was bigger than a simple meeting. A minute later, his phone buzzed again, this time with an address. At exactly midnight, David pulled up to an unmarked building in an industrial area outside the city. The place looked abandoned, but as soon as he stepped out of his car, a set of steel doors slid open. A tall woman in a lab coat stood inside, her sharp blue eyes scanning him. "Dr. Carter?" David asked hesitantly. She nodded and motioned for him to follow. The doors closed behind them, sealing the two inside. As they walked down a long, dimly lit hallway, David couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far bigger than he was ready for. They reached a secure elevator. Dr. Carter pressed her palm against a biometric scanner, and the doors slid open. The ride down was silent until she finally spoke. "You have no idea how valuable your work is, do you?" David frowned. "I worked on battery efficiency for Tesla. That's all." She chuckled. "That's what you think. But your modifications didn't just improve Tesla batteries. They can do something else. Something no one is supposed to know about yet." David's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" The elevator doors opened, revealing a sprawling underground lab. Engineers in white coats moved frantically between massive machines, glowing panels, and, most shockingly, a prototype of something that looked eerily like a spacecraft. David took a step back. "What the hell is this?" Dr. Carter faced him, her expression serious. "This is what comes next. And your technology is the missing piece." He was still processing what he was seeing when another voice echoed across the lab. "I was wondering when you'd show up." David turned to see Elon Musk standing by a control panel, watching him with that same unreadable expression he always had. "You knew about this?" David asked, his mind spinning. Elon nodded. "Of course. This is why I hired you." David swallowed hard. "I thought I was working on Tesla batteries. Not whatever this is." Elon smirked. "Tesla was just a test. The real work is here." David exhaled, staring at the spacecraft before him. His mind raced through everything he thought he knew about energy, efficiency, and propulsion. If what they were saying was true, his technology wasn't just about improving electric cars. It was about something much bigger. "How far are we from making this work?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Dr. Carter glanced at Elon. Elon grinned. "That depends. How fast can you solve the next problem?" David took a deep breath and stepped forward. Whatever this was, whatever they were building, he was ready. David stared at the spacecraft before him, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. The sleek metallic structure, lined with panels that pulsed with an eerie blue glow, looked like something out of a science fiction movie. He turned to Elon, his throat dry. "You're telling me my battery efficiency work was meant for this?" Elon smirked. "Not just for this, because of this." David glanced at Dr. Carter, who remained stone-faced. "We've been working on this for years," she said. "The problem has always been energy efficiency. We needed a system that could sustain itself for deep space travel without relying on traditional fuel sources. Your modifications made that possible." David shook his head. "But I wasn't designing for space travel. I was just trying to improve Tesla's range." "And that's why you were perfect," Elon said, crossing his arms. "You weren't thinking about limits. You were just solving a problem. And in doing so, you stumbled upon something revolutionary." David took a slow breath, trying to steady himself. A year ago, he was flipping burgers. Now he was standing in a secret underground lab, staring at a spaceship powered by his own designs. It was too much to process. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" he finally asked. Dr. Carter turned to Elon, as if giving him the floor. "We need you to finish what you started," Elon said. "The battery technology is there, but we need it to be stable under extreme conditions. The power output has to be consistent, no matter what happens." David frowned. "What kind of extreme conditions are we talking about?" Elon hesitated for the first time. "We're planning a mission," he said finally. "A mission farther than anything humanity has attempted before." David felt his pulse quicken. "Mars." Elon shook his head. David's breath caught. "Further." Elon nodded. "We've discovered something, David. Something out there." David exchanged a glance with Dr. Carter. She gave a small nod, then pressed a button on the console beside her. The room darkened, and a holographic projection lit up in the air between them. At first, David didn't understand what he was looking at. It seemed like a cluster of stars, a deep space scan. But then a shape appeared in the center, something massive, something unnatural. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a structure. David took a step closer, his heart hammering. "What is this?" Dr. Carter exhaled. "We don't know, but it's not natural." David turned to Elon, searching his face for answers. "You're telling me there's something artificial out there?" Elon nodded. "And we're going to find out what it is." David's mind reeled. He had always admired Tesla, SpaceX, everything Elon had built, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just about innovation. This was about something bigger than anything he had ever imagined. "You want me to help power this ship so you can reach that?" "Yes," Elon said simply. David turned back to the hologram. The structure floated in the darkness of space, silent and mysterious. If it was real, if something like that actually existed out there, then this was more than a mission. This was history in the making. He thought about all the years he had spent struggling, trying to prove himself, trying to show the world that he was more than just a guy working at McDonald's. And now, fate had handed him an opportunity that no one else on Earth would ever get. He could walk away. He could go back to a normal life, back to Tesla, back to safety. Or he could step into the unknown. David clenched his fists. What do I need to do? Elon's grin widened. Welcome to the future. The next few weeks were a blur. David was given full access to the lab, working alongside some of the greatest minds in aerospace engineering. The spacecraft, codenamed Nova 1, was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its design was revolutionary, built with materials that weren't even public knowledge yet. But the real challenge was the power source. David spent countless hours fine-tuning his designs, adjusting the energy output, making sure the system could withstand the pressures of deep space. Every night, he would stare at the hologram of the strange structure, wondering what they would find when they finally got there. One night, as he was running diagnostics, Dr. Carter approached him. "You're making incredible progress," she said. "But I have to ask, are you ready for what comes next?" David glanced at her. "You mean the launch?" She hesitated. "Not just that. Everything. Once we go out there, there's no turning back." David exhaled. "I've spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't meant for where I was. Now, I feel like I finally found my place." Dr. Carter studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then let's get to work." 3 months later, they stood on the launch pad. The world didn't know what was happening. This mission wasn't being broadcasted. It wasn't in the news. As far as the public was concerned, this launch didn't exist. David sat inside Nova 1, strapped into his seat, heart pounding. Elon stood outside the control room, giving final instructions. "You're about to do something that no human has ever done before," he said through the comms. "Remember, this isn't just about exploration. It's about the future of humanity." David tightened his grip on the armrests. He had dreamed of doing something great, but he never imagined it would be this. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. He glanced at the holographic display in front of him. The destination, the mysterious structure, was highlighted on the screen. 7, 6, 5. His pulse raced. 4, 3, 2. The engines roared to life. 1. Ignition. With a force that pressed him deep into his seat, Nova 1 lifted off the ground, breaking through the atmosphere in mere moments. The Earth shrank behind them, and soon, the darkness of space surrounded them. David exhaled slowly. No turning back now. As the ship adjusted its course, he stared at the blinking dot on the navigation system, the unknown structure that waited for them in the vastness of space. He had no idea what they would find, but he was ready. David floated weightlessly in the command module of Nova 1, staring at the blinking dot on the holographic display, the mysterious structure that had sparked this entire mission. It was still millions of miles away, a ghostly anomaly at the edge of human understanding. The ship hummed softly around him, the result of months of tireless work. The battery system he had designed was holding steady, distributing power efficiently, and keeping the ship on course. Through the reinforced glass of the viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly. Stars blinked like ancient sentinels in the distance, and the darkness felt deeper than anything he had ever imagined. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. The mission had just begun. "Status check," came Dr. Carter's voice through the comms. David adjusted himself and tapped the screen in front of him. "Power levels are steady. All systems green. We're on course." "Good," Carter responded. "You should reach the object in approximately 23 days. We'll maintain contact as long as possible." David nodded, though he knew communication would become more difficult the further he traveled. There would be a point where he was truly alone, cut off from Earth, sailing through the black void toward something no human had ever seen before. The ship's AI, codenamed Athena, chimed in. "Would you like me to engage automated flight monitoring, David?" He exhaled. "Yeah, take over for now, Athena. I need some rest." "Understood." David pushed himself toward the crew quarters, a small chamber lined with soft padding and a sleeping harness to keep him from floating around. He secured himself, closed his eyes, and let the soft hum of the ship lull him into sleep. But his dreams were restless. He saw flashes of something, lights in the darkness, a presence lurking just beyond his vision. a sensation of being watched, a whisper in a language he didn't understand. When he woke, his heart was racing. Shaking it off, he unfastened himself and floated back to the command module. He checked the ship's systems. Everything was normal. The object was still days away. Yet, the dream clung to him like static in his mind. As the days passed, the mission settled into a rhythm. He ran diagnostics, checked the energy outputs, monitored their trajectory. Communication with Earth grew weaker, their voices more distant with each passing day. And yet, the closer he got to the object, the more he felt something. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. Then, on the 19th day, Athena spoke up. "David, we are approaching visual range of the object." His heart leaped into his throat. "Show me," he said, pushing toward the viewport. A moment later, the ship's external cameras focused, and the holographic display shifted to show the first clear image of what had drawn them into deep space. David's breath caught. The structure was enormous, far larger than any space station or satellite ever built by humans. It wasn't an asteroid, nor was it a natural formation. It was smooth, dark, and metallic, almost like obsidian, but with an unnatural sheen. Strange glowing lines traced its surface, pulsing faintly, as though alive. It was ancient, that much was clear. Yet it was still operational, still waiting. A shiver ran down his spine. Athena analyzed the structure. Scanning, the AI responded. A few moments passed before it spoke again. Unknown material composition. No known terrestrial elements detected. Power signatures detected, low but active. Structure does not match any recorded extraterrestrial anomalies. David's fingers trembled as he adjusted the controls. Is there an entry point? Detecting. Yes. There is an opening on the far side, approximately 500 meters in diameter. It appears to be a docking bay of some kind. His stomach tightened. Someone or something built this, he murmured. He activated the ship's thrusters, adjusting his trajectory to align with the massive opening. As Nova 1 drew closer, the details of the structure became clearer. Strange symbols lined the exterior, etched into the dark metal. Some looked like constellations. Others, he wasn't sure. Then, as he approached the docking bay, something unexpected happened. The ship's systems flickered. Lights dimmed. Alarms sounded. "Warning," Athena said. "Unknown energy field detected, interfering with ship systems." David cursed, gripping the controls. "Shut down all non-essential functions. Divert power to shields." The ship lurched slightly as it passed through an invisible field surrounding the structure. But then, just as suddenly, the interference stopped. The system stabilized. The alarms quieted, and the ship glided smoothly into the docking bay, coming to a near-perfect stop inside. The interior of the docking bay was cavernous, large enough to house multiple spacecraft. The walls shimmered with the same glowing patterns as the exterior. David's hands clenched into fists. This was it, the moment of truth. He activated his spacesuit, sealing the helmet into place. The heads-up display came to life, giving him oxygen levels, pressure readings, and environmental data. Everything was stable. The airlock hissed open. David took a deep breath. Then, he stepped into the unknown. The moment his boots touched the surface, a strange sensation washed over him, like a static charge rippling through his suit. The floor beneath him was metallic, but it felt soft, almost organic. He scanned the area. The walls pulsed faintly, as if responding to his presence. His radio crackled. "David, do you copy?" It was faint, but he recognized Dr. Carter's voice. "I hear you," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm inside." There was a pause. "Be careful," she said. David swallowed hard and moved forward. As he stepped deeper into the structure, the lights along the walls brightened, illuminating a corridor ahead. Then, a sound, a low, humming vibration. His heart pounded. Something was waking up. He turned a corner and froze. Before him stood a massive door, adorned with symbols he had never seen before. And, in the center, a control panel with a single glowing handprint. His own hand began to tremble. Was this a test? A message? His gut told him that this was why he had come, that he was meant to be here. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and placed his hand on the panel. The moment his fingers touched the surface, the entire room came alive. The walls pulsed with energy. The ground vibrated. A deep, resonant hum filled the air. David gasped as images flooded his mind. Stars, galaxies, planets, a network of interconnected worlds. And then, a figure, not human, its eyes locked onto his across space and time, and a voice, deep and resonant, echoed in his mind. You are not the first. David's breath hitched. The voice continued. But you are the most important. Then, the door began to open. And David knew. This was only the beginning. David's heart pounded like a war drum in his chest as the massive door rumbled open before him. The air around him crackled with energy, and a low, otherworldly hum resonated through the walls of the structure. The symbols carved into the metallic surface pulsed in unison, as if reacting to his presence. He took a cautious step forward, his breath shallow within the confines of his helmet. The HUD inside his visor flashed warnings: unknown energy sources, fluctuating electromagnetic fields, erratic oxygen readings. Yet, he felt no immediate danger. If anything, it was as if the structure itself had been waiting for him. As the door fully slid open, revealing a long corridor bathed in a dim blue light, David hesitated for just a moment. He glanced back at his ship, the Nova 1, now dwarfed by the sheer magnitude of the docking bay. A part of him wanted to retreat, to return to the familiar confines of his vessel and send a message back to Earth. But deep down, he knew there was no turning back. Something within him, whether instinct, fate, or some unexplainable force, urged him forward. He stepped into the corridor, and the moment his foot made contact with the floor, the walls came alive. Symbols rearranged themselves, forming patterns that seemed to shift like liquid metal. The lights pulsed in a rhythm that almost resembled a heartbeat. A presence lingered in the air, unseen but palpable, as if countless eyes were watching him from the shadows. His radio crackled, startling him. "David, are you still receiving?" It was Dr. Carter's voice, distant and fragmented. "I'm here," he responded, his voice hushed. "I've entered the structure." The door opened on its own. There was a pause, then static, then Carter's voice again, fainter this time. "Be careful, we're losing your signal, unknown interference." Then silence. David exhaled sharply. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The corridor stretched onward, seemingly endless, yet something about its design made it feel like it was shifting, as though space itself was being manipulated. The deeper he walked, the more he felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity, like a memory buried deep in his subconscious was trying to surface. He shook the thought away, focusing on his surroundings. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared high above, vanishing into darkness. The walls were lined with strange, translucent panels filled with a faint, swirling luminescence. At the center of the room stood a massive pedestal, and hovering above it was an object, a sphere, smooth and black as the void itself, pulsing with a dull red glow. David approached slowly, every step measured. As he neared the pedestal, the sphere reacted, the glow intensifying. Then, without warning, a voice, deep, resonant, and not entirely human, echoed through the chamber, reverberating in his mind. "You have come." David's breath hitched. His hands clenched into fists. Who are you?" "We are what remains." The words were not spoken in a language he knew, yet he understood them as clearly as if they had been in English. The sphere pulsed in rhythm with the voice, its surface shifting, almost liquid. "We have waited." David swallowed hard. Waited for what? For the next. The chamber grew eerily silent. The walls shimmered with ghostly patterns, displaying what looked like star charts, constellations that shifted and rearranged themselves. Then, an image flickered to life in front of him, a projection of a planet. But not Earth. It was massive, adorned with swirling clouds of deep purple and blue, with golden cities stretching across its surface. This isn't Earth," David murmured. The voice resonated again. It was home. David's mind raced. You mean your home? Our beginning. Our end. The image changed. A great cataclysm. Planets torn asunder. Entire solar systems collapsing in upon themselves. And then the dark void. A silence that stretched for eternity. David staggered backward. Your civilization was wiped out. The voice was quiet now. Not all. A new image appeared, beings tall and slender, with luminous eyes, standing before massive structures that bore the same symbols he had seen throughout the corridor. Then another image, this time. Earth. Cities. Humans. And at the center of it all, something buried deep beneath the planet's crust. David's stomach twisted. What is this? Why are you showing me this? Because you are the last piece. His heart pounded. The air around him felt charged with something ancient, something far beyond human comprehension. What do you mean? He demanded. The sphere pulsed. You were never meant to be apart. David's mind reeled. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about discovering an alien civilization. This was about something bigger, something older than humanity itself. He took a step closer to the sphere, his hand reaching out instinctively. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy shot through him. Images flooded his mind, visions of worlds, of civilizations long forgotten, of knowledge beyond comprehension. And then, a face. Not alien, human. His own. His breath caught. What is this? The voice echoed, softer this time. You were always meant to return. David's vision blurred. The walls of the chamber trembled. The sphere pulsed one last time. And then, darkness. Silence. And a single thought remained in his mind. He was never just an explorer. He was the key. David's consciousness flickered between light and darkness. His mind stretched beyond the limits of time and space. It was as if his very essence had been pulled from his body, hurled through a vast and infinite ocean of knowledge, memories, and forgotten histories. His own thoughts no longer felt entirely his own. He could feel something else there, something vast and ancient, a presence that had been waiting for him long before he ever set foot in this place. He tried to move, but his body no longer responded. He wasn't sure if he even had a body anymore. Then, suddenly, the darkness receded. He gasped as he found himself standing in the middle of a grand hall, its walls stretching into infinity, carved with the same pulsating symbols that had haunted his journey. The air was thick with a sense of power, a quiet hum vibrating through his bones. Directly in front of him, the black sphere hovered in perfect stillness, but now it was different. It no longer pulsed with an ominous glow. Instead, its surface was smooth and still, like the calm eye of a raging storm. You are beginning to see. The voice rang through his mind again, but this time it wasn't just a sound. It was an emotion, a weight pressing into his very soul. It wasn't commanding, nor was it hostile. It was patient, waiting. David clenched his fists, grounding himself in the moment. See what? He demanded, his voice echoing in the infinite hall. What am I supposed to understand? The walls around him shifted, and suddenly they weren't walls at all. They became vast, celestial landscapes, each one a frozen moment in time. He saw worlds engulfed in flames, civilizations collapsing under the weight of their own hubris. He saw towering beings of light and shadow, locked in an endless struggle across the cosmos. And then he saw something that made his breath catch, Earth. But not as he knew it. It was ancient, untouched by the scars of modern industry. Colossal structures, impossibly intricate and advanced, stood where modern cities should have been. Towering obelisks carved with the same symbols he had seen throughout the ruins. And at the center of it all, a massive gateway pulsing with energy, hidden deep beneath the planet's surface. Earth was never just a beginning. David's pulse quickened. What are you saying? The scene shifted again. This time, he saw something far more terrifying. He saw humanity, not as explorers, not as conquerors, but as something else entirely. He saw them arriving on Earth, not as its first inhabitants, but as refugees, their minds wiped clean of their past. He saw great ships descending from the heavens, carrying the last remnants of a fallen empire. And he saw the architects of that empire, the beings who had once ruled, now nothing more than ghosts in the cosmic winds. A sharp pain shot through his skull, and he dropped to his knees. The knowledge was too much. It was like trying to hold an ocean in the palm of his hand. His entire perception of reality was unraveling before him. "Why are you showing me this?" he gasped, gripping his head. "Because you are the last of us." The words sent a chill through his entire being. He shook his head, trying to deny it. "No, that's impossible. I'm human. I was born on Earth. My parents." The images shifted once more, showing him his own life. His childhood, his parents, his first steps into space exploration. But then, something was different. The memories flickered, distorted. A layer of reality peeled away, revealing something beneath it. He wasn't just human. He had never been. Somewhere, deep in his DNA, in the very core of his being, something ancient had been sleeping, waiting for the moment it would be awakened. And now it had. David's breathing was ragged. He looked up at the sphere, at the infinite cosmos reflected in its surface. What am I supposed to do? Remember. The word wasn't just a command. It was a release. The energy in the room surged, and David felt his body lift from the ground. His mind expanded, stretching beyond the limits of his former self. Memories flooded back, not just his own, but those of an entire civilization. He remembered their triumphs, their failures, their desperate attempt to save what little remained of their people. He remembered the final choice, to send their essence forward, into the future, into new vessels that could one day reclaim what was lost. And now it had come full circle. He opened his eyes, and for the first time, he saw the world as it truly was. He was no longer just David Carter, the astronaut, the explorer. He was something far more. And the universe was waiting. David hovered in the infinite vastness of the unknown, his consciousness expanding beyond the fragile constraints of the man he once was. He could feel his heart beating, but it was no longer just his heart. It was the pulse of something greater, something ancient, something that had existed long before humanity's first spark of intelligence flickered to life. He could see everything now, not just with his eyes, but with a perception that stretched beyond dimensions, beyond time itself. The vast chamber around him was shifting, evolving, as if responding to his awakening. The black sphere, which had once loomed over him with an enigmatic presence, now pulsed gently, almost like a living entity. It was no longer just an object. It was a beacon, a remnant of a civilization that had tried and failed to preserve itself through the endless void of time. And now, David was the key. Memories that weren't his own surged through him in an unrelenting flood. He saw vast cities of crystalline spires rising from landscapes untouched by war. He saw beings tall and luminous, their forms flickering like golden embers, speaking in a language that wasn't spoken with tongues but transmitted through thought itself. He felt their joy, their triumphs, their pursuit of knowledge that spanned across galaxies. And then he saw their fall. A great war. A war not fought with weapons, but with time itself. The enemy was a force beyond comprehension, something that consumed not just life, but the very fabric of existence. A force that left nothing behind, not even memories. The civilization had fought, resisting the inevitable for millennia. But in the end, they knew they could not win. They could only do one thing: hide. Preserve themselves not in their bodies, but in fragments of consciousness, buried deep within the genetic code of those who would come after them. David was one of them. He clutched his chest as the realization burned through him, his breath ragged, his mind teetering on the edge of complete dissolution. He could feel the weight of an entire species resting upon his existence, and it was unbearable. He wasn't ready for this. He was just a man, an astronaut, a scientist, not a god, not a savior. You were never meant to be a savior. The voice echoed through him again, but this time it wasn't just speaking, it was guiding. David's body lowered gently onto the cold, metallic floor of the chamber, though it no longer felt foreign to him. It was familiar. It was home. The realization sent a new kind of fear coursing through him. If this place was home, then what did that make Earth? A cradle? A refuge? A prison? His thoughts were interrupted as the walls of the chamber shimmered, revealing something beyond. A corridor stretching into eternity, lined with towering structures that seemed to hum with dormant power. He knew, instinctively, that he had to walk forward. Each step he took sent ripples through the floor beneath him, as if the structure itself recognized his presence. As he moved deeper into the corridor, images flickered to life along the walls, glimpses of a lost civilization, of its people, of their greatest achievements. He saw entire worlds terraformed in the blink of an eye, artificial stars igniting in the darkness of space. And then he saw something that made his breath catch. The Earth. But it was different. It wasn't the Earth he knew. It was younger, raw, untouched by human hands. And orbiting around it were colossal structures, machines unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. They weren't just observing. They were constructing. David stepped closer, reaching out toward the image as realization struck him like a lightning bolt. The Earth had not been the birthplace of humanity. It had been built for them. He staggered back, his mind reeling. If this was true, if humanity had been placed there, then it meant everything he had ever known was a lie. Evolution, history, the rise and fall of civilizations, it had all been guided, orchestrated, manipulated by something greater. And now, that something had called him back. His fingers curled into fists. Why me? His voice was raw, filled with a desperate need for answers. Why now? Because time is running out. The chamber trembled. The once calm hum of energy beneath his feet turned into a deafening roar, and the images around him began to distort. The walls flickered, revealing glimpses of something outside, something vast, dark, and pulsating with an energy that sent a primal terror through David's soul. It was coming. Whatever had destroyed the civilization before him, whatever had forced them to bury themselves in the fragments of genetic memory, it had found them again. And it was coming to finish what it had started. David's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His hands clenched at his sides. He didn't understand everything. He didn't know why he had been chosen or what he was supposed to do, but one thing was clear. He couldn't turn back. A deep vibration shook the chamber as a hidden door slid open before him, revealing a vast expanse beyond. A sky unlike anything he had ever seen stretched above him. Stars burned in impossible colors, swirling in patterns that defied logic. Structures, miles high, rose from the surface of what he could only assume was another world entirely. And at the center of it all, a massive construct, an ancient vessel, waiting. A memory, buried deep within his newly awakened mind, surfaced. He knew this ship. He knew how to control it. He knew that it was the last remnant of his people's once great fleet. And he knew that if he didn't act now, there would be nothing left to save. Taking a deep breath, David stepped forward. His past, his identity, his very existence had been rewritten. But none of that mattered now. He had a purpose, a mission. And as he placed his hand on the interface of the ship, feeling the dormant power stir beneath his touch, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. As David placed his hand on the interface, a surge of energy shot through his body, searing his nerves with knowledge that had been locked away for eons. His mind expanded, absorbing the intricacies of the ancient vessel, as if he had always known them. This was not just a ship, it was a living entity, a relic of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. He could feel its power stirring, awakening from a slumber that had lasted longer than human history itself. Every fiber of his being resonated with the realization that this was what he had been born for. He was not just a man. He was a remnant, a vessel for a lost race's final hope. The chamber around him began to shift, the walls peeling away like layers of an illusion. The cold metallic floor beneath him hummed, vibrating with the ship's reawakening. A massive viewing panel, stretching from floor to ceiling, materialized in front of him, revealing the expanse of the strange world outside. Jagged spires of a forgotten city stretched toward the heavens, their surfaces pulsing with faint, ghostly light. The air itself seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow, as if time had bent and fractured in this place, leaving remnants of what once was. But beyond the city, looming like a shadow on the horizon, was something far more terrifying. A rift, a swirling vortex of absolute darkness, tearing through space itself. It pulsated with an unnatural energy, devouring light, warping reality around it. David could feel it. Not just see it, but feel it, an abyss that consumed not just matter, but the very essence of existence. It was the same force that had destroyed his ancestors, the same enemy that had driven them to bury their knowledge within human genetics, waiting for a time when someone like him could awaken. And now, after all these years, it had returned to finish what it had started. David gritted his teeth, his fingers tightening against the ship's interface. He had no plan, no strategy, just an instinctual certainty that he could not allow this to happen. His thoughts raced as the ship responded to his will, systems flaring to life, ancient mechanisms roaring back into motion. A deep, resonant hum filled the chamber, the ship's power surging, as if it had merely been waiting for his command. Symbols flickered across the control panels, alien glyphs that should have been incomprehensible but made perfect sense to him. He understood them as if he had always known them. The ship was arming itself. Outside, the rift pulsed violently, its edges expanding, stretching hungrily toward the ruins of the forgotten city. Massive tendrils of dark energy spiraled outward, twisting like serpents through the sky. The very fabric of reality was unraveling. Structures that had stood for millennia began to crumble, their foundations dissolving into the nothingness. The ground beneath the ship trembled, warning of the impending collapse of everything around it. David knew he had to act. He could not allow the mistakes of the past to be repeated. The ship's engines ignited with a force that shook the entire structure. Gravity twisted around him as the vessel lifted from the surface, breaking free from the crumbling world below. The ancient city, once a stronghold of his people, now fell into ruin, consumed by the spreading void. His heart pounded in his chest as he gripped the controls, guiding the ship toward the rift. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to escape while he still could, but something deep within him, something ancient, knew that running was no longer an option. The ship surged forward, breaking through the atmosphere, the vortex of darkness filling his vision. The closer he got, the more he could feel it, an intelligence lurking within the abyss, a consciousness older than time itself. This was not just destruction. It was not just an anomaly. It was alive, and it knew he was here. A voice, no, a presence, invaded his mind. It was not words, not in any language he had ever known, but pure understanding. A flood of emotions, of concepts so vast and incomprehensible they threatened to shatter his very sense of self. This was the enemy. The force that had hunted his people across galaxies, the force that had erased civilizations from existence. It had no name, no form, only hunger. A hunger that had existed since the dawn of creation. And now it recognized him. David gritted his teeth, resisting the overwhelming force pressing against his mind. He could feel it trying to consume him, trying to erase him the way it had erased so many before. But something fought back. Something within him. Something buried deep in his DNA, in the genetic code left behind by the ones who had come before him. He was not just a man. He was their last hope. He reached out not with his hands, but with his mind. The ship responded, its ancient weapons systems locking onto the heart of the rift. He didn't understand how he knew what to do, only that he did. Energy surged through the ship's core, gathering into a single point, a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. It was not a missile. It was not a laser. It was something more fundamental, something woven into the very fabric of reality itself. A final creation of a race that had known they would not survive, but had ensured that their legacy would. The presence within the rift recoiled, sensing the threat. The darkness writhed, its tendrils lashing out in desperation. But it was too late. David unleashed the weapon. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light, Just silence. And then, reality itself shattered. A blinding wave of energy exploded outward, a ripple through existence that tore through the darkness like a blade. The rift screamed, not in sound, but in the very essence of being. The void collapsed in on itself, its tendrils dissolving, its presence vanishing into nothingness. The ancient enemy, the force that had consumed entire civilizations, was gone. David gasped for air, his body trembling as the ship stabilized. The world below was in ruins, but the threat was gone. For the first time in uncountable millennia, the last remnants of his people had won. He slumped back against the control panel, his mind reeling from what had just happened. He had no idea what came next. The ship drifted in the silence of space, the stars stretching endlessly before him. But one thing was certain. This was not the end. David sat in the cockpit, his chest rising and falling in uneven breaths as the enormity of what had just happened settled in. The ancient enemy, the force that had consumed entire civilizations, was gone. And yet an eerie silence filled the ship, stretching out into the void of space. The remnants of the battlefield drifted before him, shattered fragments of a once majestic world, the echoes of a war that had lasted longer than recorded history. He should have felt victorious. He had done what no one before him had managed to do. But a cold sensation crawled up his spine. Something was wrong. The ship's systems, which had responded to him with almost sentient awareness before, now flickered uncertainly. The ancient vessel hummed beneath him, its energy signature pulsing irregularly, as if it too was uncertain of what had just occurred. He reached out to the interface, his fingers hovering over the glowing controls. But before he could act, a deep, resonant voice echoed inside his mind. "You think this is victory?" David's breath caught in his throat. The voice was not human. It was not spoken through words, but rather transmitted directly into the fabric of his consciousness. It was cold, unfeeling. It carried the weight of an intelligence so vast that it dwarfed human understanding. His fingers clenched into fists. He had felt this presence before. He had assumed the rift was destroyed, that the ancient hunger had been vanquished. But it was still here, lurking. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his thoughts. "I ended you." His voice came out hoarse, uncertain. A low, almost mocking hum vibrated through the ship's walls. "You ended an echo." David's heart pounded. An echo? He clenched his jaw, his mind racing. Had he truly destroyed the enemy, or had he only severed a fragment of it? The realization settled in his gut like a stone. This force was not bound to a single location. It was not merely a rift in space. It was something beyond time, beyond dimensions, beyond the limitations of physical reality. It had been feeding off entire civilizations for eons, and what he had fought was merely a tendril, a fraction of its vast, incomprehensible being. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to breathe. If this thing still existed, if it was still watching, then he had to act quickly. He turned to the ship's interface, his hands moving with a certainty that felt almost instinctual. He needed information. He needed answers. The ship's systems responded, displaying star charts, ancient records, data from a civilization that had disappeared long before humanity had even learned to harness fire. And there, in the depths of the archives, he saw it. A pattern. This entity had not just consumed worlds. It had been hunting something, seeking something. It wasn't just mindless destruction. It had a purpose. And every record showed the same thing. Just before the fall of each civilization, there had been a signal, a transmission sent into the farthest reaches of space. It was as if these ancient races had discovered something just before they were erased from existence. David's pulse quickened as he accessed the last transmission from his own ancestors, the ones who had embedded their knowledge into his very DNA. The screen flickered, lines of alien text cascading across it, before finally stabilizing into an image. A structure, massive, impossible, suspended in the depths of intergalactic space, hidden far beyond the reaches of any known star system. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Blacker than the void around it, Its surface was fractured like cracked stone, yet it pulsed with a strange, dim glow, as though it were alive. The records called it the last beacon. David's breath hitched. This was it. This was what his ancestors had been trying to protect. This was what the entity had been hunting. And now he had to reach it before it did. With a deep breath, he engaged the ship's navigation systems, setting coordinates for the beacon's location. The engines flared to life, and the ship surged forward, slipping into the currents of space at impossible speeds. He didn't know what he would find when he arrived, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever secrets lay buried in the last beacon, they were the key to everything. Time stretched and twisted as the ship raced through the void. The universe outside warped into streams of light, distant galaxies becoming mere streaks in his vision. He could feel the presence lingering at the edge of his consciousness, watching, waiting. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the journey ended. The ship lurched as it dropped out of hyperspace, and before him, floating in the abyss of nothingness, was the last beacon. It was even more massive than he had imagined. It loomed in the darkness, its jagged edges stretching across the void like the bones of a forgotten god. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its surface, pulsating in an eerie rhythm, as if it were breathing. The ship's scanners flickered wildly, unable to comprehend what they were detecting. David's hands trembled as he guided the ship closer. The presence in his mind grew stronger, pressing against the edges of his thoughts, whispering in the language of oblivion. The entity knew he was here. With a shuddering breath, he reached for the ship's landing protocols. He had come this far. There was no turning back now. As the vessel touched down on the structure's surface, a deep, resonant vibration filled the air. The very fabric of reality seemed to shift around him. The last beacon was awakening, and whatever lay inside was waiting for him. David took a deep breath as the ship settled onto the surface of the last beacon. The vibrations beneath his feet sent a chill through his body. It wasn't just the ship shaking. The structure itself was alive. It pulsed with an unseen energy, something ancient and beyond comprehension. His fingers hovered over the control panel, but every instinct in his body screamed at him that this was far beyond his understanding. He was standing at the edge of something monumental, something no living being had touched in eons. The air inside the ship felt heavier, the silence pressing against his ears. The presence in his mind was no longer whispering. It was waiting, watching. The moment his boots touched the surface outside, he felt it. A low, thrumming hum vibrated through his bones, almost like a voice speaking through the fabric of existence itself. The black surface beneath him was not just metal or stone. It was something else entirely, something that absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it look like he was standing on the void itself. Strange symbols flickered beneath his feet, shifting as if recognizing him, as if responding to his presence. His breath hitched. He hadn't activated anything, but someone, had noticed him. His steps were slow and deliberate as he moved forward. The ship's scanner had failed to detect any openings, but his gut told him there was a way inside. This place wasn't a ruin. It wasn't dead. It was waiting to be awakened. He ran his fingers along the surface of a towering wall, and the second he made contact, the symbols beneath his palm flared to life. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from within the structure, shaking the very ground he stood on. And then, without warning, the wall dissolved. Not into dust, not into fragments. It simply ceased to exist, revealing a dark corridor leading into the unknown. David hesitated. Every part of his rational mind told him this was a mistake, that stepping inside might mean never stepping back out. But his instincts pushed him forward. Whatever this place was, it held the answers he needed. He had spent his life searching for meaning, for something greater than himself. And now he was standing at the doorstep of a truth so ancient, so powerful, that it had shaped the course of entire civilizations. He couldn't turn back now. The corridor was vast, stretching into an abyss that seemed endless. The walls were lined with those same glowing symbols, shifting and rearranging themselves as if they were alive, as if they were speaking in a language he had no way of comprehending. The air was thick, humming with energy, making every hair on his body stand on end. He took another step forward, and suddenly, the symbols flared brighter, casting eerie shadows along the walls. A voice, not the one in his mind, but something different, echoed through the space around him. "You are not the first, but you may be the last." David froze. The voice was layered, like a chorus of countless beings speaking at once, old beyond time itself. He swallowed hard, his hands clenched into fists. "Who are you?" His voice came out steadier than he expected. A silence stretched before the voice responded. "We are what remains. We are the keepers of what was lost. And we have been waiting for you." The words sent a chill through his spine. He wasn't sure if he should feel honored or terrified. "Waiting for me?" he asked. "For one who carries the remnants of those who came before. One who bears the knowledge hidden in his blood." David's breath hitched. His ancestors. The ones who had encoded their memories, their warnings, into his very DNA. It wasn't just a safeguard. It was a message meant to lead him here. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The walls trembled, the symbols shifting again. The last defense. The final memory. The key to salvation, or the end of all things. A section of the corridor ahead of him shimmered, revealing an enormous chamber beyond. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the doors behind him sealed shut. There was no turning back now. The chamber was unlike anything he had ever seen. At its center, suspended above a platform of shifting energy, was an object that made his breath catch in his throat. It was a sphere impossibly black, darker than anything he had ever encountered. It seemed to consume the very light around it, distorting reality itself. And as he stared at it, he felt something stir inside him. A memory that was not his own. Flashes of ancient civilizations. Worlds consumed by the entity. Beings far beyond human comprehension fighting against an enemy they could barely understand. And then a desperate act, a weapon, built not to destroy, but to contain. To imprison the hunger that had been devouring entire galaxies. David staggered back, his heart hammering in his chest. The last beacon wasn't just a remnant of the past. It was a prison. And whatever was inside that sphere, it was waking up. The presence in his mind surged, no longer whispering but roaring. "You cannot stop what has already begun." The chamber trembled, the energy around the sphere flaring violently. David clenched his fists. He had a choice. He could turn and run, leave this place buried and forgotten. Or he could do what his ancestors had failed to do. He could finish what they started. He took a deep breath, stepping forward. The symbols on the walls pulsed in response, as if urging him onward. His entire life had led to this moment. He reached out, his fingers mere inches from the sphere. And then, the world around him shattered. David barely had time to react before the chamber around him seemed to explode with raw energy. The walls shimmered and collapsed into themselves, revealing an infinite expanse of shifting lights and shadows. The very fabric of reality twisted and churned, as if he were standing between two dimensions, caught in a space where time had no meaning. The sphere in front of him pulsed violently, its inky black surface warping, expanding, contracting, alive. The whispering voices in his mind turned into an unbearable roar, a cacophony of screams, whispers, and alien dialects, all colliding into one overwhelming force. David fell to his knees, clutching his head, his consciousness teetering on the brink of collapse. Images flooded his mind, galaxies torn asunder, civilizations reduced to dust, an unstoppable force consuming everything in its path. He saw the faces of those who had come before him, their eyes filled with the same realization that now threatened to suffocate him. They had failed, every last one of them. They had stood where he stood, reached toward the sphere, and succumbed to its will. The last beacon was not a defense, it was a tomb, a cage. And the creature within it had been waiting for someone foolish enough to set it free. With a shuddering gasp, David forced himself to his feet. He had spent his life searching for answers, but now that he had found them, they were more terrifying than anything he could have imagined. He had no weapon, no plan, just the knowledge that if he did nothing, the entity within the sphere would awaken fully. And when it did, nothing in the universe would be able to stop it. The sphere pulsed again, and this time a crack split across its surface. A deep guttural sound, like the slow groan of a dying star, filled the chamber. It was coming apart. David's mind raced. If this place had been built as a prison, then there had to be a way to reinforce the containment. His ancestors hadn't been able to destroy the entity, but they had managed to trap it. He scanned the walls, searching for some kind of mechanism, a failsafe, anything. The shifting symbols around him flickered in and out of focus, forming patterns, instructions that he could barely comprehend. It was as if the very structure of the beacon was trying to communicate with him, urging him to act before it was too late. Then he saw it. At the far end of the chamber, a raised platform shimmered into existence. A control panel, ancient and almost fused into the very essence of the beacon itself. He ran toward it, his breath ragged, his vision blurring as the force within the sphere reached out, tendrils of black mist stretching toward him. The whispers in his head became voices, distinct now, no longer just echoes of the past. You cannot contain me again. I am older than your stars, older than your gods. You are nothing. David ignored them, his fingers flying across the control panel, pressing symbols that felt both foreign and familiar. The entire structure groaned as if in protest, but beneath the chaos, he could feel something else, a pulse, a heartbeat. The last beacon was alive, and it was responding to him. The sphere cracked further, splitting apart like fractured glass, and for the first time, David saw what was inside. A form shifting, writhing, constantly changing, unable to maintain a single shape. It had no eyes, no mouth, but he could feel it staring at him, feel the weight of its presence pressing down on his very soul. It was vast, incomprehensible, an entity that defied the very laws of existence. It had no name because it was beyond the concept of identity. It was hunger, it was void, it was the end of all things. And it was waking up. David's hands moved frantically across the panel. He had no idea what he was doing, only that he had to do something. The symbols around him flared, and a deep rumble shook the chamber as the beacon responded. The energy around the sphere coiled, tightening like a net, constricting the entity within. It screamed not in sound, but in thought, a psychic wail that threatened to split David's mind apart. Blood trickled from his nose, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The platform beneath him shuddered. The containment field was reactivating, but it wasn't enough. The entity was too strong. It was resisting, pushing back against the prison meant to hold it. David's vision blurred as the symbols burned into his mind, and suddenly he understood. The only way to fully seal the entity again was to use a power source strong enough to bind it indefinitely. The only thing strong enough was him. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was why his ancestors had failed. They had built the prison, but had no way to fuel it. They had contained the entity, but only temporarily. And now, standing at the edge of oblivion, David knew there was only one way to finish what they had started. His hands trembled as he reached for the final control, the one that would merge his consciousness with the beacon itself. He would become part of it, his very essence woven into its structure, an eternal guardian to ensure that the entity never broke free again. It was a fate worse than death, but it was the only choice left. The entity thrashed, its form growing more unstable. It could sense what was about to happen. You do not have to do this. The voice was different this time. No longer a chorus of screams, no longer a whisper of terror. It was singular. It was pleading. David hesitated. The entity was afraid. For the first time, he saw something beyond the hunger, beyond the void. Something deeper, something lost. He took a breath, steadying himself. I know, he whispered. But I do. Then, without another second of hesitation, he pressed the final sequence. A blinding light erupted around him, consuming the chamber, the beacon, the entity, everything. His body disintegrated, his consciousness stretched beyond time and space. He became part of the beacon, part of the prison, part of the last defense against the void. And as the last echoes of his humanity faded, the universe remained safe, unaware of the sacrifice that had been made. For now,